this tournament keeps taking people, not just teams, not just dreams, people. And every few years, football reminds everyone of something they try very hard to forget. Behind the lights, behind the celebrations, behind the songs and flags, and millions of people screaming at televisions around the world, this game can suddenly become brutally quiet because another World Cup journey just found another victim. And for a few seconds, nobody understood how serious it was. Everything had been perfect. Canada were cruising. The atmosphere was electric. The crowd had that feeling every football fan knows, that strange confidence where it feels like nothing can go wrong. Goals had come. Momentum was building. Players were smiling. Everything looked comfortable. Then 8 minutes into the second half, something happened. And inside the stadium, people heard a sound nobody ever wants to hear. Not a chant, not a whistle, not celebration. That sound. The one that instantly changes faces. The one that makes players stop moving before they even understand what happened. Because football players know that sound. Fans know that sound. You hear it, and suddenly your brain starts racing ahead before your eyes catch up. No. No, no, no. Not that. Not now. Not him. Ismael Kone went down, and immediately something felt wrong. Really wrong, because injuries happen every week in football. Players pull muscles, players twist ankles, players walk off, managers clap, fans applaud, the game moves on. But this wasn't that. You could see it instantly. Players weren't reacting like this was normal. Players were panicking. Some were putting their hands on their heads. Others looked away completely. And suddenly the stadium that had been exploding with energy moments earlier became almost silent because people weren't watching football anymore. They were waiting for movement, waiting for a signal, waiting for anything, and then cameras caught something small. A thumbs up, just a thumbs up, and somehow that tiny movement became the biggest moment in the stadium because everyone had been holding their breath. Everyone. Teammates, fans, coaches, people watching around the world. That tiny gesture said one thing: I'm here, I'm okay, at least for now. But even then something felt off because medical staff stayed around him. They weren't rushing, they weren't treating this like a normal injury, and when oxygen equipment appeared, the mood changed again because suddenly people weren't thinking about substitutions. They weren't thinking about score lines. They weren't thinking about the match. Now they were asking a much bigger question: how bad is this? Because football has a strange way of turning time into something different. 90 minutes can disappear in seconds, but moments like this feel endless. Every second feels longer. Every image becomes heavier. And while people waited, another reality started creeping in. Ismael Kone wasn't just another player lying on the ground. He wasn't just a squad number. He wasn't just another athlete inside a system. There was an entire story underneath that jersey, and suddenly people started remembering it because long before the stadium lights and television cameras, there was another journey happening, a much quieter one, a much harder one. Kone's path started far away from this moment, from Ivory Coast, from a kid chasing something almost impossible, because football is full of people chasing odds they are never supposed to beat. Millions play. Almost nobody reaches this level. Almost nobody reaches international football. Almost nobody gets close to the World Cup. And yet somehow he kept moving, league after league, country after country, step by step, slowly becoming more than potential, slowly becoming one of the players people started believing in. And football runs on belief. Fans believe, coaches believe. Teams believe, players believe, until one moment arrives and suddenly everything changes. One tackle, one step, one landing, one horrible second, that's all it takes. And football has done this before, over and over again, because every major tournament sells a dream. The cameras show celebrations, the music gets louder, the stories become bigger, heroes are created, legacies are built, but hidden underneath all of that is something much less comfortable. Pressure, enormous pressure. Bodies pushed to limits, players carrying expectations from entire countries, months of preparation for moments that disappear instantly, and sometimes the cost shows itself in the most brutal way possible, because this wasn't just about an injury anymore. Look at the reactions. That told the real story. Teammates weren't celebrating goals. They weren't celebrating the score. They looked shaken, because suddenly football felt small, really small. People always say players are professionals. They're trained for this. They're mentally prepared. They understand the risks. And that's true. It's true. But there's another side people don't always talk about. These aren't robots. These are friends, teammates, brothers, people who spend more time together than with their own families, people who eat together, travel together, train together, laugh together, lose together, and now they had watched one of their own disappear behind medical staff. So when people later talked about tactics and formations and match analysis, something felt strange, because the team itself didn't seem focused on football anymore. Their minds were somewhere else. And that creates another question. How do you continue? Seriously, how do you continue? How do you walk back onto a pitch pretending everything is normal? How do you chase goals after watching teammates cry? How do you celebrate after hearing that sound? Because that's the contradiction football creates. The game continues. It always continues. Whistles blow, substitutions happen, matches end, schedules move forward. The machine keeps moving. Always. But people don't move that fast. People stay stuck in moments. And you could feel that happening here. Because suddenly winning didn't seem important. The result didn't seem important. Nothing seemed important except one thing. Is he okay? And when fans started reacting online, there was a pattern. People weren't arguing about tactics. They weren't debating performances. Everything became simpler. Messages, prayers, support, hope. Because for a moment, football disappeared completely. Human beings took over. But even that creates another uncomfortable thought. Why does it sometimes take moments like this? Why do people suddenly remember humanity only after disaster arrives? Because football constantly asks people to forget what players really are. They're treated like assets, values, transfers, statistics, numbers on screens, millions here, millions there. But then something happens. A player goes down, a stadium falls silent, and suddenly everybody remembers. Oh right, this is a person. This is somebody's son, somebody's friend, somebody's teammate, somebody's future. And that future is suddenly uncertain. That's the part nobody likes. Uncertainty, because football fans can accept losing. They can accept bad performances. They can accept disappointment. What they hate is uncertainty, not knowing, waiting, because waiting creates space, and space creates fear. People start asking questions. What happens next? How serious is it? How long will recovery take? Will he come back the same? Will he come back at all? And football history is filled with players who had one path before injury and another path after it. That's what makes moments like this so heavy, because sometimes injuries heal, sometimes players return stronger, sometimes they write incredible comeback stories, and sometimes things change forever. Nobody knows which story this becomes yet. Nobody. But that's exactly why these moments stay with people. Because the World Cup isn't just where dreams happen, it's also where dreams get interrupted, sometimes brutally, sometimes without warning, and maybe that's why teammates started talking differently afterward, because now there was another mission, not just winning, not just progressing, playing for him. Carrying something bigger than football, carrying someone. Because when one person falls inside a team, the psychology changes, the meaning changes, everything changes. And maybe that's the strangest thing about all of this. The World Cup keeps creating unforgettable moments, but not all unforgettable moments are celebrations. Some are silence, some are tears, some are a crowd staring at a screen hoping for movement, some are a small thumbs up that suddenly means everything. And every tournament leaves behind stories people never expected to remember. Not goals, not trophies, not headlines. Moments, human moments. Because long after the final whistle disappears, long after champions lift trophies and fireworks explode into the sky, people remember something else. They remember the moment football stopped feeling like a game.